Just imagine that the iPhone and the iPad have come out and they're tremendously successful and they've had a great launch. And Steve Jobs just had the biggest impact on the world by the announcement of an upgrade to the iPhone. And the board of Apple decides to let Steve Jobs go. I just want to ask our audience, can any of you think of someone that would think that was a good idea? I mean, anyone, short of he murdered someone, he was involved in some type of trafficking, major drug deal, something else. That's what just happened with this nonprofit board, and we want to talk about this tonight. You know, ChatGPT is a very important player. Some people even think it is the only thing. I mean, they actually think AI and ChatGPT are the same thing, and folks, it's not. It's not the only player. But we want to really talk about what occurred recently.
And that's a good example, Martin, because 2023 has already been a very exciting and head-spinning year in tech to begin with. You know, two examples are Sam Bankman with, 6 criminal counts. That's FTX founder, and, everything he did with the dishonesty, compliance, whatnot. He's facing up to 110 years right now. And then Binance just recently settling over $4 billion for laundering, for compliance, for things like that, which was the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the world and still is. And, they're being allowed to stay, operating, but, that could have gone a very different way. And so right in the midst of that, Sam Altman, who is so ingrained with artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, DALL-E through OpenAI, and then Microsoft, it was just wild, one, that this even happened. And then the roller coaster over the 4-day span of the weekend was just even crazier. And so, yeah, it goes a lot back to the board, and I know we'll get into the timeline here in a minute, but it really does take understanding the key players. And so when you look at the old board, and this is the board prior to, we'll call it the event, you
Last
had
week.
that's right. You had Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO, Greg Brockman, who was ex OpenAI president, Ilya Sutskever, who is OpenAI's chief scientist, Adam D'Angelo, who's the CEO of Quora, and Poe, which we'll talk about Poe in a little bit. Then you have Macaulay, who's the co-founder for the Center for Governance of AI, GovAI, Helen Toner, who's the director at Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technologies, and also a member of GovAI's board. And so there, of course, it came as such a surprise to everybody when the news of Altman getting fired came out and everybody started pointing fingers. What didn't help this was the fact that when the outcry for answers came, the board, fought so hard not to give any one specific reason as to why he was fired, to the point where, as we see now, the open letter that's now with about 95% of the total workforce of OpenAI threatening to leave if he's not reinstated, which, today the talk was that he is being reinstated as CEO. And so that caused a lot of skepticism, mistrust, and then a ton of theories that have come out over the weekend. And there's been a lot of apologies both way. For example, Adam D'Angelo, we'll go into that in a little bit. He was kind of the target of the masses firsthand because his platform Poe is one that allows you kind of like a one-stop shop for AI-based tools where you can come and find ChatGPT, Claude, and any number of tools out there that are AI powered that you can use. And so a lot of people thought when the Dev Day presentation came and you can create your own chatbot or GPT now, it was disrupting D'Angelo. And so the first thing a lot of people jumped on was he's the one responsible because he doesn't want his company to die. So, one thing a lot of people have to remember when you're talking about the board is with OpenAI, the board is not compensated. They don't get a return from the success of OpenAI. So there's really not a lot of skin in the game. So when you look at somebody like D'Angelo, who has a company that could get disrupted by something like ChatGPT and DALL-E, especially when you're able to create your own GPTs now, that's funds he's going to lose that he's not being compensated for. So his loyalty is kind of to his company. And we'll go more into that again. But then, too, one of the things that was so weird about this was the fact that the board approached Anthropic, who is the creator of Claude, who is the direct competitor to OpenAI and ChatGPT. Claude is a direct competitor to ChatGPT. Many people feel that Anthropic is right on the pulse of where we need to be with AI ethics, way more than OpenAI. Claude is used widely, maybe not to the extent of ChatGPT, but a very widely used tool. And so it's worth mentioning the kind of ties there. There was a lot of confusion as why would the board oust Sam Altman and then go to their direct competitor and say, take us over. We want to merge with you and you take the reins. Now, of course, Anthropic wisely said no. And, the big gorilla in the room is Microsoft as to why they would do that. But it's worth mentioning some of the ties here. So, one of the past board members prior to the one that was in place last week was Holden Karnofsky, who's the founder of Effective Altruism Research and grant-making foundation Open Philanthropy. He did resign as his wife, Daniela, and I may botch this, Amode, left OpenAI to help launch Anthropic. So you have, an employee and then a previous board member closely tied with Anthropic. So, of course, you had those ties there in OpenAI and in the board. And then, again, Toner and Macaulay are openly tied ideologically to their comment, to the work by Anthropic, with Toner co-authoring a paper in support of Anthropic and their work with ethics and compliance in AI as far back as 2012 while sitting on the board of OpenAI, and then openly criticizing OpenAI as being quoted saying that they were taking shortcuts and were not up to par as to Anthropic. So that's just kind of the big buzz that was over the weekend that I think has kind of shifted and been thrown out there. And so, yeah, when you say that, that kind of takes the Sam Bankman-Fried and everything else and kind of pushes it to the side because that's huge news.
No, I think this is important. I want to back up just a minute for anyone who's not familiar with these players and do some definition. And first of all, ChatGPT is an AI system that you interface with, and it gives answers, and it sounds like common conversation, and many people think it is the world of AI. It's not the only player. It's the one that's in the highlight, the news, and everything else, and it's a major player. But there's many other players. There's Bing, of course. They have their own. And then Google's has their own that they were forced to really come out because ChatGPT came out, made it free. People started playing with it and go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this technology existed. And then there's several other players, like you saw in Anthropic, their right. program. In fact, we teach that in our class. We teach many of those aspects. So just know these are interfacing. They're multiple players, and we're mainly talking immediately about the text right. interfaces. And you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. You can ask another question, and it has a feeling like you're talking to somebody. So it's generating virtually one word at a time, real time, which has some problems with scalability. There's nothing buffered. It's not going to a file system to find it. It's really generating real time. So this is amazing technology. And this is basically with the latest event, which was ChatGPT's main event, their first one ever. They announced a whole bunch of added features that lets a lot of us, even small businesses, have the opportunity to make money with it. Now, let's remember that this was originally started as a noble cause to address the idea of big money taking over the AI system. And then, of course, Elon backed out, and apparently he didn't
Mm-hmm.
keep his word. I don't know the exact word why he backed out, but he stepped away, probably
Mm-hmm.
absorbed in some new squirrel that went by. and and then Microsoft came along and said, "I'm glad to give money to this,"
Right.
and saw the writing on the board for it. So I think there's several things I want to talk about. I think the board
Right.
was subject to what I call noble cause not connected to reality. This is something I see in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times in nonprofits is they think nonprofit means I don't have to give attention to money. And I'm speculating that's one of the sins that occurred. Second of all,
Right.
the fact that they didn't even foresee the damage this would do unless they wanted to destroy the company, which let's not rule that out. There are people that
Mm-hmm.
feel the world is a better place without human beings right now. So crazy's everywhere. Okay. Unless their goal was we'd like to tank the company for some agenda,
Mm-hmm.
then it to me shows just a profound lack of understanding that there are consequences to your actions. That even if you didn't like him, or you think he was running too fast, or you think he wasn't honoring the original intention, making an action like this to me without further data shows a profound disconnect from reality. Now, just
Right.
because people are academic smart doesn't mean I trust them with my lawnmower or kitchen utensils. So they don't. I've learned coaching many very, very intelligent PhDs
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't go. They're often brilliant in their niche, but they aren't general in intelligence. They're specialized intelligence, and I'm very excited to see ultimately what occurs. But the
Right.
fact of this is shown you need breakups in industries like this. You need
Right.
some type of earthquake to shake it out and prove that it can survive. And I think in the long run, even though there's a break in trust, in the long run, this is going to show that AI is here to stay. It's showing that a lot of people are willing to invest time and money in it, and it's not going away. So for those people going, I'm skittish, maybe I shouldn't start learning about it, the answer
Mm-hmm.
is no. This is what evolution of a market looks like, and you better stay on it. That's why I do want to mention, Justin, you and I have I and Dana Gower, we have training both in small business and large corporation. That's our
Right.
little plug in there for it. So that's to me the initial piece is that I think it just shows, my gosh, if the board wanted to destroy trust and confidence in what they're
Right.
doing, they did the perfect action. If the board was noble in their cause but wanted to make a ChatGPT vulnerable for a Microsoft or someone else to take it over, they did the exact action. And I see this in human beings a lot, Justin, where people
Right.
aren't thinking through the consequences of their quote noble actions.
Which a buzzword that is surfacing here too is effective altruism, which I think most of the public came to really become familiar with that with the Sam Bankman-Fried with FTX, because he largely proclaimed effective altruism that, because of his power and position, it was his duty to make life better for everyone around him. Now, unfortunately, I think he focused more on making his life better than along with that, more so than anyone else. But you make a good point. There's a few points I want to touch in that. Is in the open letter signed by almost the entirety of the company, there is one part that they touch on, which I've heard referenced a lot to Toner, which I think she was the one that really headed up approaching Anthropic to essentially offer OpenAI up in a platter. But toward the end of the letter, it says, yet within 2 days of your initial decision, you again replaced interim CEO Mira Murati against the best interests of the company. You also informed the leadership team that allowing the company to be destroyed would be consistent with the mission. And the mission they're talking about there is AI ethics and to touch on your Elon Musk, I think a lot of people are surprised or reminded about Elon Musk's involvement with OpenAI. So, when you look back at 2015, there were two board members, which was essentially Elon Musk and Sam Altman. And even then, Sam Altman was a big player in artificial intelligence. And as that board grew, eventually Musk started to feel like they were falling behind Google to a dangerous point and offered to take effective leadership of the company. The board at the time did not feel that was a good call. And so Musk kind of got frustrated and opted to leave from the board, stating conflict of interest because of the work he's doing with Tesla and AI, building robots and androids, however you want to look at that. And so that was kind of the thing that pushed that he walked on, citing that. Now, there are claims that he agreed to nearly $1 billion of funding. When he left, there are claims that he did contribute $100 million. So that's where OpenAI was originally created as a nonprofit company that really focused on ethics, ethical development, and use of artificial intelligence. And so at this point, because of that funding gap, this is where they restructured and added an additional OpenAI Global LLC. And so this is when they restructured part of the company and added OpenAI Global LLC, which was a capped profit model, for-profit entity that would be controlled by the nonprofit. And this was to fill that funding gap that was left, between the 100 million that was given and the 1 billion that was expected. And this was 2019. And so they still had the goal of advancing digital intelligence in the way that is most likely to benefit humanity as a whole. And a lot of this was with ethics. And if you go to the OpenAI website, it'll provide some of this information, including the fact that ChatGPT became the fastest growing application of all time since being launched last year. And so, as you can imagine, when you have someone like Elon Musk walk with a considerable portion of funding left, and yet you have the fastest growing application of all time, you've got to do something. And what happened there is, although this is great, you have growth, AI is real big, and you have this developing technology, but then you want it to be in hands of a company that is incredibly focused on positive human impact and free research, free use, and really pushing something that can help the human race and the workforce, freelancers, small business, everything. You want it to be in the hand of a company that's hyper focused on ethics. But what began to happen was factions started to form within the company, primarily factions on the nonprofit side, which still focused heavily on ethics and responsibility, and then a faction with Sam Altman on the development side. And so, in a way, you kind of had Sam Altman and Greg Brockman as the Silicon Valley side of OpenAI with the capped for profit, and Ilya Sutskever being on the more nonprofit, invested in the ethical side and the risks of the technology to the public. So this kind of exasperated and brought forth a lot of the claims that members felt they could not trust Altman. And where this comes from, and it's becoming much more of a talking point in the last 2 days, is it made it seem as though Altman was dishonest with the board, which, Binance, FTX, everybody goes to, okay, he was laundering money or he was embezzling, things like that. I will say that the board did do a good job at least saying it was nothing malevolent or dishonest that he was fired for, but it's still, without giving a definition of them feeling that he was not showing candor, that he was, slow erosion of trust, did make it seem like he had done something that was dishonest. However, it's amazing. You mentioned Microsoft. Not only does Microsoft have a 49% stake in the company, in OpenAI, and has given up to $10 billion toward the ChatGPT and the development of these tools. But it's really interesting how the board felt that they didn't have the whole picture, and yet Sam Altman and the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, were right on the same page. And you could see this energy and you could see this relationship in any of the keynote stages that they've been on. They were right hand in hand, because one thing that came up was, how is it that within a day of him being fired, does not only him and Greg Brockman have a job with Microsoft, but Microsoft is saying that any employee up to the full amount, 700 some employees, have jobs at Microsoft. And so the alarm bell that started ringing was that, oh, this was just a way to acquire OpenAI, and in a less messy way, without really acquiring OpenAI, more so acquiring the talent from OpenAI. And, when they acquired, I believe it was Blizzard, in the recent year, it was a huge, long, drawn out legal regulatory process. And so a lot of people started claiming, oh, this was a way to get around the red tape. So that way they could just bring OpenAI into the fold, reinvent it as a part of Microsoft, and then Microsoft has all the ownership of it. Well, they already have 49% stake in it. But what's coming out is one of the biggest and strongest theories that I've seen is that, so Sam Altman is pretty brilliant in a way of, he wants to move away from dependence on third-party sources. So not only is he creating ChatGPT and DALL-E and the software, the AI, he's already looking forward to AGI. They want to break the code on artificial general intelligence, which is much more specialized and much more advanced than just artificial intelligence. And they want to be ready for when that time comes. They don't want to be beholden to anybody like, say, NVIDIA. And so what a lot of people are saying the erosion of trust or the candor is that Altman has been traveling the globe recently looking at how to integrate their own chips, how to have an end user device, so essentially a phone. Microsoft did pursue this at one point with a Microsoft phone. Nadella did say that one of his bigger regrets is that they didn't carry that forward, because the thing is that all the things that Altman's doing, Microsoft is also doing. They're working, they just revealed a chip of their own. And so really right now, NVIDIA is the only one in the world that, and they're a chip maker, technology maker, they're focusing on their own AI too, but they're really the only one in the world that produces the specific type of chip that's needed to run language models and the networks. And so right now, essentially, if you're building artificial intelligence, you're purchasing their chips from them. And so what Altman and Microsoft is doing is they're trying to find a way to do this internally and build the necessary infrastructure to where when they do actually tap the code for AGI, they can run everything through themselves and not have to rely on any outside source that could tie them down, could burden them, or even be used as a limiter of some type. And so with this, the theory is that the board, one, this scared the board because of how much influence Altman had with Microsoft, and many, I think, saw it as power. Two, when you look at, like Suskever with ethics, I think he thought that Altman was moving maybe a little too fast on things and maybe spread thin, when there are a large portion of both OpenAI and even Microsoft that still praise Altman on what he's doing, while still operating under the umbrella of responsible and ethical use. And I could see that, because if you're looking at building your own internal infrastructure, you have complete control on the ethical and responsible use from end to end, from the actual model to the end user. So I would think that would be something that would be applauded for him. But then too, I think it frightened him to a bit to find out that Microsoft and Satya Nadella was not surprised really by it. He was, from accounts, he was furious that they fired him. But the fact that it was, wow, Sam, you're doing all of these things, it wasn't, it was, he knew. And so I think, and what a lot of people are starting to really think is they can't really pin any one thing on him as being dishonest. But I think they're frustrated because perhaps he wasn't, or he didn't give them as much information as they felt they should have had, when it seems like his best interests are in the company. And that's seen even when in the articles that you see with him and Brockman going to Microsoft, but yet every report accounted that he was trying to get back to OpenAI. I think if he was looking at just selling out the company and making money or growing in power, it probably would have been a good move to just go to Microsoft and run an entire section subsidiary of Microsoft. But I think it really showed how much he believes in the company and what they're doing, that he was frantically trying to get back into OpenAI. And so I think those are some flags there that really, if it's red flags, it's on the board, and they're perhaps either incompetence, not being able to understand the vision that Altman possessed. And then two, I think some of them were almost intimidated of his foresight, the strategy. And I'm not trying to, I mean, I'm sure there are definite ways that he could have been more transparent about this and potentially communicated it better. Do I think that would have resolved this? I'm not sure. I think that the roster of the old board had and still has a great number of concerns associated with it, especially when you look at Anthropic. When you look at the current board as of today, there's four established, but they're looking at six positions. So one, of course, is Brett Taylor, who's going to be the chair, and he's the former co-CEO of Salesforce, so he has a lot of experience in with things like this. Sam Altman, of course, is back as the CEO. Adam D'Angelo, and I want to talk about him briefly because he was the first scapegoat, and I'm glad to see that people are recanting and offering apologies to him, because so Adam D'Angelo is the CEO of Quora, which is the largest question and answer platform on the internet. It's if you have a question, they bring together people who have questions and professionals and experts who can answer those questions. Now, what he did as early as January, February of this year is he also launched Poe. And there's a lot of established proof of this. There's a lot of established interviews. TechCrunch has some really good interviews with him on Poe. And it was just a platform where you could essentially, like Google Store or Apple Store, go and specifically find AI based tools that you can use. And so, of course, the Dev Day preview and updates and announcements from OpenAI and Altman would obviously potentially shake something like that up. At the same time, I can't imagine that D'Angelo went into that blind as a member of the board. I'm sure he had to be aware of that somewhat, but of course, the knee jerk reaction was OpenAI is going to kill Poe, and it was fight or die. And so a lot of people jumped on that. I don't think it felt right. It just didn't seem like a petty, vindictive feeling. I don't know about you. When I first read into that, it seemed like, if that was the case, that would have been more concerning with everything going on. But I think the conflict of interest that's kind of coming out now with some of the board members makes a lot more sense. But anyway, then you have Larry Summers, who's an economist. He was the 71st United States Secretary of the Treasury. He served from 1999 to 2001. Also, the director of the National Economic Council from 2009 to 2010. And then he also served as president of, I believe, Harvard University for a time. If not, he was high up in with Harvard. But that is a good move, having an established economist on the board, because this is going to be disruptive to the workforce. This is going to have an impact on the economy in some way, shape, or form. It already is. And so I think that's a great move with Larry Summers being involved. And I think that's a very good way. Adam D'Angelo, I think that's a great move, keeping him on the board because of his experience with what they're doing. And of course, Brett Taylor, Sam Altman, I know Brockman is still going to be involved as well. And so you're seeing it's already moving in a really good direction. And so going back to this schism, uh, it's very interesting to find out. And I know one thing, Martin, you and I do in our trainings is we don't just teach the tools. We do focus on the responsible and ethical use of these tools, especially when it comes to other people's work and how easy it can be to seem like low hanging fruit to take certain things because AI makes it easy and use it, but that's not the most ethical or legal or responsible thing to do. And so I know, especially when we look at marketing tools and generative images, I know that's one thing we always establish there. But then, too, we always look at the functionality of it and how can you truly use this to impact your small business. And so when we go back to the factions and that slow erosion, it's really interesting. We also give a background on who the players are and why this is important. Microsoft, Google, and why because they're the established workspaces that most everybody uses. But what's really interesting when this was all coming out, especially with Sutskever, was that it seemed like the big schism, even though Sutskever thankfully came back to the aid of Altman, even signed the open letter and made a public apology for being the deciding vote that essentially fired Altman. It is very interesting. Sutskever is the chief scientist of OpenAI, and he's the computer scientist and became well known for a 2012 paper on machine learning that was co-authored by his mentor, uh, Gregory Hinton, who is a legend within artificial intelligence. He's been in it since, I believe, near the beginning. Everybody knows the name in the industry. He is known in recent news for recently leaving Google earlier this year because he felt that he could not openly speak about the risks and ethics associated with AI development and the speed in which it was progressing at Google. So he actually left Google so he could spend more time being a voice. And so, that's another thread to OpenAI, which, makes sense that it's the most valuable AI development company right now. It's valued at about $100 billion, and that includes the investments by Microsoft. Just to show 49% coming from Microsoft is not a small drop in the bucket. They're really investing in this. And so during the fast, rapid development of ChatGPT and all these tools coming out, Sutskever was very public in his concern with the risks of AI development. We saw some of this with the white paper and the experts earlier this year, Musk being one of them, coming out and publicly calling for a slowdown on development. Sutskever was one of them that agreed with that. And he said that he felt Altman was moving a little too fast. And so, in hindsight, I think with him obtaining more of this information we talked about earlier about Altman's plan and his strategy and what he wants to do while still operating under the same, I think, mission that Sutskever is, I think that really showed in his sudden flip and that he deeply regretted it. And so that's kind of the general outlay of what is coming out on why this happened. It looks a little less more vendetta because of a similar competing platform, and more so a kind of, it almost looked like a coup to take power from Altman and influence from Altman, which the irony of it is it looks like it strengthened him. It strengthened him with his position in OpenAI. It strengthened him in the AI community, and it strengthened him in his relationship with Microsoft. And so I think it really backfired on whoever it was who really started, and a lot of people are saying Helen Toner again as being the main instigator here, as she's already been known for criticizing OpenAI multiple times, even while sitting as a board member. And so I think it kind of backfired, Martin. But this is the kind of stuff that I think people need to understand, because one of the big things here is I'm sure that there are people who have seen this and it's kind of strengthened their resolve, and I don't need to mess with artificial intelligence. This is why it's just scary stuff. People are getting fired, boards, OpenAI seemed to come very close to just being destroyed over this last weekend, or at least destroyed in name and absorbed into Microsoft. I don't think the Anthropic thing was ever a threat, because I can only imagine the level of contracts and the fact that Microsoft had 49% stake in the company. I just couldn't see them letting that go. But I think at this point, it does set up a potential future where Microsoft could more readily and easily merge or acquire OpenAI, which really some people could look at that and say, wow, that's essentially a monopoly. And that's terrifying, that this would essentially move Microsoft from being behind Apple in terms of sheer size and influence to essentially making it the most potentially powerful company in the world. Or, you could say the history of mankind with artificial intelligence and AGI. But the thing, too, that I think people need to take away from this is that this could have gone a lot different. This could have been a corrupt organization or company that was gravely neglecting or misusing this. But the fact that this blew up in the way it did still does show that OpenAI, for the most part, and even to an extent Microsoft, are still viewing this in an ethical, responsible way, in the way that at least it was handled. And so that does give some hope there that the regulation and the compliance on this is there, and it's very important to the key players. But I don't think that people need to just turn it off and never integrate it.
This upheaval with this much money and this much focus on how this is changing our world right now, where, legal offices that might have 32 people now have 3. Even at its beginning level, this occurring is more than ever a alarm clock for people to do their best to learn about it. It's even if you look at something like crypto brought on the government issued versions of it that are occurring. Look at the timeline with that. So crypto brought on attention towards blockchain, then that shook up. And
right.
There's, whenever you have new technology, there's going to be people wanting to invest in it that don't do their homework, and there are going to be bad players that show up. And I think this is one of the healthy disruptors that occurred that will ultimately long-term strengthen the whole system. Now, should we stop paying attention to the ethics, the ramifications? Mm-hmm. No, of course not. What does this mean to the average person in AI? What I said in the intro to this is you need to be learning something about it. You need to understand it. You need to not stuff your head in the sand. It's changing our culture before our eyes. And the people who will probably be the most out of jobs are the ones that want to have nothing to do with it, instead of going, okay, it's coming into the office, how can I learn? And I want to give examples. I'm old enough to know, I've met administrative assistants that when the IBM device came in, that administrative assistant said, I'm going to learn everything about this. This is the future over here, and pretty much guaranteed a job. It's usually the people that, instead of going, oh, the ocean shifting, how can we control the whole ocean? Ask, how can we teach people to surf? And I think this is important. I also want to reiterate something when I was in the corporate world, when we saw something stupid, says now that they shot themselves in the first foot, they now need to shoot themselves in the second foot to prove the first was an accident. So I think people shouldn't underestimate the ability of large companies and people with high PhDs making amazingly not so well thought actions,
Right.
because just because they're good at X doesn't mean they can generalize, and that they aren't humans that are affected by what I call noble causes non-grounded in reality. And
Right.
I'm betting my money on that's what was driving in the background. They went, oh no, it's not what we intended. Okay, well, let's not cut off everything that's generating money immediately. We need to maybe have some more talks. We need to, they could have created, there's a warning to him and put an
Right.
official warning. We need to discuss things. We're investigating. There's a warning. But the idea they moved in this way is when people do that, they generally get the opposite consequences. So I believe this is going to be a piece of business history taught for a while, and we're getting to see it. It's like the birth
Mhm.
of a supernova, seeing it for the first time. It's an important piece. And that's why I wanted us to do this discussion, is to go, folks, don't stop learning this. That's why we have the program for small business, and you help out with the one with Dana and I
Mhm.
for professionals, so that they at least learn these terms, know what's going
Mhm.
on, knowing the players, and realize this, the best thing I can do for my career is get educated on it.
And I completely agree. And just to touch on some quick points from what you're saying, I agree with you completely, because with a corporation, they're driven by dollars, and those dollars come from their consumers, their customers. And so you can directly influence in a way, to an extent, how they operate. That is completely true. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to see more and increased scrutiny of AI as a whole. And I really do think we're witnessing history. I do think that the firing of Sam Altman is going to go down in history, not just business history, but history and technology. And it's probably going to be noteworthy as, say the Vanderbilts and, things like that, and that revolution, because we're in another industrial revolution with the advancement of AI. And your point is so good about learning it is, I'm a PhD. I'm also, a workforce development specialist, but I also came from a farm, and I know through hard work, which you can do. And when I was growing up, every bit of technology I could get my hands on, I said, I'm going to learn that, because as much as I enjoy being outside, I don't think I want to farm the rest of my life. And I really had a quick take on technology, and I'm able to quickly absorb it and learn it. But the saying that I really follow when it comes to AI and the workforce is, we're far from AI taking your job. AI is not going to take your job anytime soon. The person who can effectively use AI is going to take your job. And so when you hear people talking about AI took my job, what I think we really need to look into is, when you're looking at the downsizing of departments, it's not, like McDonald's, where they have a programmed machine you can order from. It's not, wow, my whole sales floor was taken offline because they put a box in there with a computer and it's doing all our jobs now. No, they're probably the top percentage of, not even the top percentage of sales, the top percentage of sales people that understand AI probably took, so maybe a third of the department are now doing 100% of the output, because a third of them probably didn't believe in learning artificial intelligence or how it could help them. The other third probably didn't take it seriously or completely shut off to it, but a third actually took the time and learned the skills and learned the tools, and that third are what's left after it was downsized. And I think that's what we're really going to be seeing over the next few years, is a shift not directly to autonomous AI, but a shift to downsizing, and downsizing to a super skilled workforce who already understands their craft, but understands how to augment that with artificial intelligence. And that's going to impact everything from the small business, the single person copywriter, to corporations like Microsoft. I think we're going to see it across the board, and it's going to be much more. I mean, really, the last thing that I believe impacted life as we know it to this degree was electricity. But the fact that something like the firing of Sam Altman is going to be much like back in the day with electricity, when you started having fires, the legislation and the corporations really cracked down on safety. Are we insulating these wires the right way? What can we do? Because if we're burning down our customers' homes, they're going to go back to fire anyway. So,
Yeah, they'll
those
get gas
candles.
lamps turned on if we're
That's
just
right.
burning. They can
Right.
burn them down with gas lamps. They don't need electricity.
That's right.
To do it.
If electricity is burning down more homes than a gas lamp, they're just going to go back to gas lamps. And so they had to do something to increase the safety and responsible use of it. I think that's what we're going to see here, because I think we're not just going to see. I think they're going to be scrutinizing Microsoft, because I think it really shone light on how prepared Nadella is for this move.
Take the whole team on. We got your jobs. You keep your salary. Well, let's not
That's
forget
right.
Salesforce made the offer too. So it shows you
Right.
how valuable this is. These large companies
Right.
go, this knowledge is so important. The Salesforce goes, anybody wants a job over here, we'll match your salary. Just come on over, gang.
That's right.
I mean, these
That's
are
right.
these are the indicators that show us how important this whole field is and why you want to pay attention to it. You know, it gets down to the old thing of Watergate that I grew up with, is follow the money. I mean, and the money is going here, and the investing is going here, and the potential for having one employee doing the work of multiple with tools like this. Like you said, the guy will take the job, or the gal will take the job of the person who can leverage these tools and do the job. They're the ones that will probably be the first to get it. So I think it's important. Justin, I wanted to jump over to David Amerland. Was kind enough. He was going to join us. He had another commitment, and he's overseas. And he made a little video that's kind of a nice generalized. I said, just anything you want to contribute. He's an amazing thought leader, a good friend, and I recommend just follow everything he does and buy his books.
Without a doubt, every time we think of artificial intelligence these days, the very strong inferential capabilities and natural language presentation of large language models like ChatGPT springs to mind. But the real power behind such models lies not so much in their inferential capability or their ability to be queried using natural language or their presentation of natural language as an answer, but in their potential of being integrated into information retrieval in the future. That is both a challenge, but also it will amplify their capability and their usability, and they will make them true partners to a business. The involvement of Microsoft in the OpenAI movement, they're the single largest shareholder. They own 49% of OpenAI. OpenAI owns ChatGPT and developed it. And also Microsoft's $50 billion bet in this approach by building new data centers indicates that this is where things are heading. So if you're thinking right now, what is it I should be doing for the future to benefit from the usage of artificial intelligence across the web? Well, you should be thinking about creating the kind of content that will appeal to search. It will appear high in search because it's useful, but also will be easy to understand for a large language model like ChatGPT. And if you think that you can present information in such a way, that will put you in a position to take advantage of the future developments that will happen in this area.
David Amerland, I want to thank you for making the video and jumping on. We'll find a way to get you involved. I've always enjoyed working with you. And I also want to shout out to Dana Dana Gower is in the north celebrating Thanksgiving while we're doing it. Someone might ask why we're really nerds here, because this is Thanksgiving Eve and this is something exciting for us to do, and we both have activities for our family. So that's probably the definition of a real nerd.
And I think he does a great job. Like I said, he's a great thought leader. He's definitely worth checking out and following. A lot of great content there. And he makes a great point in we often think when a new technology comes out, we panic and put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we have to sound so technical and we have to sound so experienced in it. But personally, and in my personal case, and I know working with Martin and Dana, is that the most impactful skill to have, especially when you're working with something like artificial intelligence, is being able to take those technical, complex skills and really break them down into easily chewable and digestible bits and pieces. And I think, and it goes back to storytelling and how we're a species that values storytelling, and why it's so impactful is because we can connect and we can communicate through these stories. And so I think being able to learn these skills, it's very important, but to take them and really break them down to your audience, those are the individuals that are going to be the most impactful and the most successful in the future, because everyone's going to be so overwhelmed by how fast this is going to start moving, even more so than now, that they're going to need somebody who can guide them in a way that they're able to easily understand. So I think those are beautiful words and a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, this over 5-day event that just happened with ChatGPT and OpenAI is quite reflective of the speed of transformation happening in the AI field. It's just, instead of 6 months, it's what's going on this week, what's going on today.
Right.
And we are all in contact, since we're doing our trainings and offerings, of, did you see what just happened today? And it seems like that's every day, some major changes. I want to end with is, yes, you should learn about it. Yes, dip your toe. If you have a chance to be to either of our trainings, Run, Don't Walk, or bring us in, because we really do have excellent content. And I would say download the ChatGPT, open the free app, and just start playing with it. Now, we always talk about safety, so don't say, hey, wonder what happens if I put my entire corporate secrets into this thing and see what it says. Don't do that. Just like, on Facebook years ago, Justin and I said, don't put a note that you leave your children in the park when you go shopping and you feel they're safe there on Saturday morning. You want to enter any new technology with education. It's just I'll just add the analogy, Justin, around firearm safety. You want to move from paranoia and terror to respect, and or versus just naively doing something and not thinking about consequences at all. So that's what my closing thing is. You want to dip your toe, you want to get some experience, you want to get education, and find little ways to experiment. I mean, you might just take it and say, I'd like to have a turkey with this type of flavor in it, or something like that, or something added to it as well. So that's my piece on it. And then also make sure to follow what we're doing. We'll put links below that have it. Justin, thanks so much for jumping in on this, and excellent review of you've been keeping up so well with what's actually the minimum pieces, that are going on with this. And also a shout out to David Amerland for contributing, and also Dana Gower in the background, because he was sending articles from his trip for us to review for this as well. So we are working to find new ways to help small business and professional to be more successful in what they do. And that's something all of us are very passionate about. And also I'm passionate about, as well as Justin is, supporting small business marketplace. That's critical, because that's still, I believe, the backbone of our country. large companies have to buy small companies because they can't innovate anymore. So,
That's
that's
right.
why we must protect the small businesses in our culture and community.
Yeah, and to touch on your thing there with safety, ChatGPT is available in iPhone and Android. Just make sure it is a free app. Make sure you get the app from OpenAI. Obviously, if you have to pay, you're paying somebody. It's not OpenAI. Definitely, most everything's gonna want at least the email address, maybe Google to open an account. Same with Bing. Make sure if you do Bing Chat, which is ChatGPT 4 powered Microsoft AI chatbot, that it's Microsoft and it is also free. Obviously, they don't need your date of birth and social security number, so you should never offer that. But just make sure you practice safety and you do a little research before you move into it, because unfortunately, there are some dishonest parties out there. But again, download it to your phone. Feel free. You may even be able to say, provide the next 2 dinners from my Thanksgiving leftovers and get some recipes out of it as well. So there's a fun way to learn. But I agree. And again, thank you to David and Dana and Martin. This is an incredible journey, and I've had a lot of fun. Like you said, we are nerds here, and this is a lot of fun to be able to follow things like this, break it down, and provide it to you. So we're really excited about working with you on a project and really bring this level of fun and commitment and energy to all of our trainings. So it's always been a big blast. I've really enjoyed it.
Sounds great.